What I am about to share with you might be the most important conversation we have ever had, because if you are over 60, there is a very high probability that the habits you believe are keeping you healthy are actually creating hidden risks that nobody has sat you down to explain. You have spent your whole life listening to advice about how to take care of your body, but as we cross that 60-year threshold, the rules of the game change entirely, and most of the information floating around is either outdated or missing the one piece of the puzzle that keeps you independent and strong. I am Dr. Robert Vance, and for years I have helped older adults understand the subtle, often overlooked changes that happen inside the body as we age, so they can stay stronger, safer, and independent for as long as possible. Today I want to peel back the curtain on how your body is actually functioning right now, because there is a massive difference between feeling fine and being truly protected. And there are two specific questions I want to answer for you before we finish this talk. Why does the most common health advice often fail us as we age? And what is the one silent, often invisible signal your body is sending that most people dismiss until it is far too late to correct? I want you to stay with me, because by the time we are done, we're going to look at your daily routine, your kitchen pantry, and even the way you move through your own home with a completely new perspective, and you will understand why some of the most basic actions you take every morning are actually the foundation for the longevity you are looking for. Let me tell you about Arthur. He was 72, a retired teacher, and the kind of man who took pride in his discipline. He walked every morning, he watched his diet, and he was the person his friends called when they needed advice on how to stay active. But Arthur came into my office one Tuesday, and he looked smaller, more fragile than he had the year before. He told me he was tired, just generally wiped out, and he had developed a strange habit of holding onto the door frames whenever he walked from the kitchen to the living room. He thought it was just age, and he had started to withdraw, stopped going to his weekly card games, and spent more time on the sofa because he didn't want to admit to himself that he was losing his balance. Arthur had made a very common mistake. He had assumed that because he was doing all the right things, eating his vegetables, getting his steps in, that his body would just automatically stay as capable as it was at 50. He didn't realize that muscle mass was quietly fading away, a process we call sarcopenia, which doesn't announce itself with pain or drama. It happens in the background, a silent thief that steals your ability to move confidently. The consequence was that Arthur was one misstep away from a fall that would have changed everything. The emotional impact was heavy. He felt like he was losing his grip on his own life. The lesson here is that at 60, 70, or 80, maintenance is not enough. You have to be intentional about building what you are losing. You have to lift, you have to challenge your muscles, and you have to prioritize protein in a way you never had to before. He wasn't failing, he just didn't know the new requirements of his body. But here's what most seniors don't realize. This isn't an inevitable part of aging. It is a biological signal telling you that your body needs a different kind of support than it did 20 years ago. When we lose muscle, we lose the engine that powers our independence. And that is why, starting today, we are going to look at how to reverse this trend. It is easy to think that if nothing hurts, nothing is wrong, but that is the most dangerous trap we face as we get older. We are trained to react to symptoms, but the most important work happens when you feel perfectly fine. Think about how often you hear people say that they are just slowing down, that it is only natural, and I want to challenge that. Slowing down is a choice that happens when we let our internal systems drift without guidance. There is a reason why some people are still hiking, traveling, and living with vigor into their 80s, while others are struggling with simple daily tasks. It is not always genetics. It is often about what they understood about their body's changing needs early on. And this is where things become concerning, because when we ignore these subtle, silent changes, we are essentially waiting for a major break rather than performing the essential maintenance that keeps us mobile and vibrant. Take Martha, for example. She was 68, a grandmother who loved her garden more than anything. She started noticing that she couldn't lift her watering cans like she used to, and her knees ached after an hour in the soil. She decided that gardening was just too hard, so she gave it up. And within 6 months, the loss of that activity led to a loss of social interaction, a loss of purpose, and a rapid decline in her mood. Martha made the mistake of assuming that if an activity becomes difficult, it must be time to stop. She didn't realize that the ache in her knees was a signal to adapt, not to quit. She could have adjusted her garden to raised beds. She could have used different tools. She could have focused on specific exercises to support those joints, but instead she allowed the limitation to shrink her world. The consequence was an isolation that was far more damaging than the knee pain ever was. The lesson is that we have to be problem solvers for our own lives. When your body gives you a sign, you have to ask what you can change to keep doing what you love, because movement is the fuel for your mind and your spirit. When you stop moving, you stop living in the way that matters most. Many of you listening today might be tempted to stop doing things that have become slightly uncomfortable, but I am here to tell you that adaptation is your best friend. What happened next in the life of my patient David surprised even his family, because he started to realize that the limitations he felt were not physical, but entirely mental. David was 75 and felt like his memory was slipping. He would walk into a room and forget why he was there, or he would struggle to remember the names of his grandchildren's friends. He was terrified that he was developing something serious, and he went through months of anxiety. When we sat down, I realized that David wasn't experiencing a cognitive decline. He was experiencing a lack of mental engagement. He had retired, stopped reading challenging material, and spent most of his day watching the news, which was designed to keep him in a state of low-level stress. He was living in a mental rut. We worked on a plan to get him back into a book club, to start a hobby he had neglected for 40 years, and to make sure he was socializing in person rather than just through a screen. Within a few months, he felt like he had woken up. The mistake was thinking that his brain was just fading. The truth was that his brain was understimulated. The lesson is that your brain needs exercise just like your heart does, and social connection is one of the most powerful forms of cognitive protection we have. This is the mistake I see again and again. People think their brain is like a clock that just winds down, when it is actually more like a garden that needs regular planting and care to keep blooming. I know it feels like there is so much conflicting advice out there. One day you hear that you should avoid fat, the next you hear you should avoid carbs, and it is enough to make anyone want to give up and just eat what they enjoy. But if you strip away all the noise, the core principles of health are simple and consistent. It is about whole foods that actually look like food. It is about keeping your body hydrated. It is about moving consistently throughout the day rather than just once. And it is about getting real restorative sleep. It is not about perfection, and it is certainly not about punishing yourself. It is about finding a sustainable rhythm that allows you to enjoy your life while keeping your machinery in good working order. Many people watching today may recognize this pattern of trying every fad diet only to end up right back where they started because the plan wasn't sustainable for the long haul. And this is why I want to emphasize that your health journey isn't a race. It's a lifelong practice. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was 81 and struggled with severe fatigue. She was taking dozens of different supplements because she had read online that they would give her energy. But she hadn't checked with anyone about whether they were actually helping or if they were interacting with each other in a negative way. She was spending a fortune and feeling worse, and the mistake she made was looking for a shortcut. She wanted a pill to fix a lifestyle issue. When we cleared out the clutter and focused on the basics, making sure she was getting enough hydration, eating enough protein, and getting outside to get natural light in the morning, her energy levels transformed. The lesson is that there is no magic bullet. The best health investment you can make is in the fundamental habits that you repeat every single day. If you are ever feeling overwhelmed, just go back to the basics. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent with the things that actually move the needle. The next warning sign is often overlooked, and that is the way our sleep patterns change, but ignoring that shift can have a massive impact on your energy the next day. We haven't even touched on the importance of your environment. You are the architect of the space you live in, and you have to make sure that space is working for you, not against you. Are there trip hazards? Is the lighting adequate? Can you reach the things you need without straining? It sounds trivial, but these small details are what keep you independent. I have seen too many people spend their retirement years dealing with the consequences of an injury that could have been prevented with a simple change to their home environment. Take pride in your home, keep it safe, and make sure it is a place that supports your health, not a place that threatens it. And this is where many people get fooled, thinking that because they have lived in the same home for 30 years, they are safe, when in reality, the home has stayed the same while their own physical needs have shifted. Think of Henry, who was 74. He had a beautiful home, but had accumulated so many stacks of books and papers over the years that he had to navigate an obstacle course just to get to the kitchen. He tripped over a rug one day and ended up with a fractured wrist. It was a wake-up call for him to simplify, to organize, and to clear the pathways. He realized that his attachment to stuff was putting his safety at risk. He spent a weekend clearing the clutter, and he told me later that he felt lighter not just physically, but mentally. The mistake was valuing his things over his freedom of movement. The consequence was a painful, limiting injury that took months to heal, but the lesson he learned was that his home should be a tool for his independence, not an obstacle course. By simplifying your environment, you are giving yourself the gift of confidence and security every single day. This is a very common challenge, but once you start looking at your space with a fresh set of eyes, you'll find it is quite empowering to take that control back. Your home is not just a place to live, it is a vital tool in maintaining your balance and independence. One of the most important things I want you to remember is that you are not a statistic. You are an individual with a unique story, a unique body, and a unique set of circumstances. Never let anyone, whether it is a doctor, a neighbor, or a headline, tell you that you are limited by your age. You have wisdom, you have perspective, and you have an incredible amount of life left to live. But to live that life to the fullest, you have to be an active participant in your own health. You have to be curious, you have to be willing to learn, and you have to be willing to challenge the status quo. If something doesn't feel right, speak up. If you don't understand something, ask for a better explanation. You are the captain of your own ship, and you deserve to know how to navigate the waters. Consider the story of Nancy, who was 69. She had been taking a medication for her blood pressure for years, but she started feeling dizzy every time she stood up from her favorite armchair. She was embarrassed to mention it to her doctor because she didn't want to seem like a complainer, and she just sat there for an extra minute every time she stood, hoping it would pass. The mistake was staying silent when her body was trying to give her a crucial warning. When she finally spoke up, we realized that the dose of her medication was a little too strong for her current system, and a simple adjustment made all the difference in the world. The consequence could have been a fall, but the lesson she learned was that being a proactive patient is the best way to protect your long-term health. If you are ever feeling like you have to endure something uncomfortable, please speak with your healthcare provider. Your symptoms are data that helps us help you. This is why paying attention to those small daily signals is the single most effective way to prevent a minor issue from becoming a major limitation. Now, let's look at the story of Robert, who is 82. He stopped taking his daily walk because the weather was getting colder, and he felt a bit more unsteady on the sidewalk. He thought he was being smart by avoiding the risk, but he ended up getting weaker because he wasn't keeping his legs active. The consequence was a loss of confidence in his ability to get out and see his friends. The lesson here is that when one door closes, another one has to open. If he couldn't walk outside, we should have found a way for him to walk inside, or use a stationary bike, or do seated exercises that kept his muscles working. He didn't have to quit. He just had to pivot. The mistake was letting a change in the environment lead to a complete stop in activity. We want to keep that momentum going because motion really is medicine. I want you to think for a moment about your own routine. Are there areas where you have stopped moving because of a minor inconvenience? And how could you adapt that habit today to keep your strength building? Let's dig deeper into the science of longevity. Many experts now understand that longevity isn't just about avoiding disease, it's about maintaining the highest level of function. Functional reserve is that extra bit of strength, balance, and cognitive capacity you have over and above what you need for daily life. Think of it like your savings account. When you're younger, your account is full. As we age, if we aren't intentional, we start dipping into those reserves just to do simple things like grocery shopping, bathing, or walking upstairs. When those reserves hit zero, that's when someone loses their independence. By staying active, keeping your mind sharp, and managing your environment, you are essentially investing in that account, protecting it against the inevitable fluctuations of life. Consider another perspective on nutrition. We often hear about the latest superfoods, but for those of us over 60, the most important superfood is often overlooked. Plain, simple, high-quality protein. Research suggests that as we age, our bodies become less efficient at processing protein to build and repair muscle. This means you may actually need more protein now than you did at 40 to maintain the same amount of strength. It isn't about eating a massive steak every night, but it is about being intentional at every single meal. Whether it's eggs, Greek yogurt, beans, lentils, or lean poultry, Getting that consistent intake throughout the day is one of the most effective strategies to prevent that silent muscle loss we discussed with Arthur. And this is where many people get discouraged. They think that because they have missed years of focused exercise or optimal nutrition, it is too late to start. That is simply not true. I have seen 80-year-olds begin strength training for the first time in their lives and see significant improvements in their mobility and their ability to carry their grandchildren. The body is always adapting, always responding to the stresses you place upon it. The key is to start slow, stay consistent, and always talk to your healthcare provider before beginning a new routine. They can help you determine what is safe for your specific situation. Think about the importance of hydration. Many seniors lose the sensation of thirst as they age. You might go all day without feeling thirsty, but your cells, your brain, and your joints are all dehydrated. This can lead to confusion, fatigue, and even balance issues. It is such a simple, low-cost intervention, keeping a glass of water nearby and sipping throughout the day, yet it is one of the most common issues I encounter. If you find water boring, try adding a slice of lemon or cucumber, or choose hydrating snacks like watermelon or celery. Your body is composed largely of water, and maintaining that balance is fundamental to every other health habit we've discussed. I want to talk about social connection again because it is frequently undervalued in clinical health. Loneliness and social isolation have been linked in research to a variety of health challenges, including cardiovascular issues and cognitive decline. It's not just about staying busy, it's about meaningful connection. Do you have someone you can call to talk about your day? Do you participate in any community groups, volunteer, or attend a place of worship? These connections act as a buffer against stress and are vital to maintaining your emotional health as you age. If you feel isolated, I encourage you to reach out to one person this week. Sometimes just that one point of connection is enough to pull you back into the rhythm of community and life. Let's look at sleep once more. Many people assume that less sleep is normal for older adults, but the quality of sleep matters just as much as the quantity. Poor sleep affects your hormones, your mood, your memory, and your ability to manage your weight. If you are struggling with sleep, look at your evening routine. Are you watching intense news right before bed? Is your room too warm? Are you drinking caffeine too late in the afternoon? Even small changes like creating a quiet, dark, and cool sleeping environment can have a profound impact. If your sleep issues persist, it is absolutely worth discussing with your doctor to rule out underlying causes like sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome. I also want to encourage you to be a lifelong learner. Whether it is learning to play a musical instrument, picking up a new language, or finally understanding how your computer works, the act of learning creates new neural pathways in the brain. It doesn't matter if you aren't good at it. The value is in the struggle, the engagement, and the effort. Keep your mind curious and you will keep it sharp. I want to recap what we have covered today because it is so easy to lose the main points in the details. We talked about how movement is non-negotiable for your muscles and your brain, how your home environment needs to be a foundation for your safety, how social connection and mental stimulation are just as important as physical health, and how the core habits of nutrition and hydration are the only things that truly provide the results you are looking for. It is not about doing everything at once. It is about choosing one or two things you can start today and being consistent with them. Perhaps today you decide to add more protein to your breakfast, or maybe you decide to look at your home and clear one area that has become an obstacle. These small wins build momentum, and momentum leads to a much higher quality of life. Always remember that the goal is not to be perfect, but to be a little bit more intentional than you were yesterday. I hope you feel encouraged by this. You have so much value to offer, and your journey is far from over. I am so glad that we could spend this time together talking about what really matters. I want you to know that your future is something you have a massive amount of influence over, and that is a beautiful thing. If you found this information helpful, please hit that subscribe button below because there is so much more I want to share with you as we continue this journey of healthy, vibrant aging together. Your support helps me reach more people who need to hear these truths, and I would be honored to have you as part of our community. Thank you for listening, for taking charge of your own path, and for being someone who values their health enough to learn and to grow. You have everything it takes to make the next chapter the best one yet, and I am going to be right here in the next video to help you navigate it. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and I will see you very soon.